hello reception, and hello nursery too. It's me, Miss Close, just saying hello. And just to say that we miss you so much, and we cannot wait for you all to come back to school and to nursery next week. So the other early years teachers and I were talking about the ways we could celebrate World Book Day this year because we won't all be together. So we thought the best way to do it would for us to read some stories and share them with you at home, so it would feel like we're all together. Does that sound like a good idea? I do hope so. So I'm really lucky because today I get to share a story with you that Mrs. Adams bought for the whole reception to have in their home learning packs. So shall we have a little look? I think you'll recognise it. It's the smartest giant in town. He does look very tall, doesn't he? And we've got up here, we've got the author, which is Julia Donaldson. And I think some of you will know that author and some of the other titles she's written. And the illustrator, which is Axel Scheffler. And he is who draws the pictures for these lovely books. So, shall we get started? There's George, look. George was a giant, the scruffiest giant in town. He always wore the same pair of old brown sandals and the old same patched up gown. I wish I wasn't the scruffiest giant in town, he said sadly. Poor George. But one day, George noticed a new shop. It was full of smart clothes. So he bought a smart shirt, a smart pair of trousers, a smart belt, a smart stripy tie, some smart socks with diamonds up the sides, and a pair of smart shiny shoes. Now I am the smartest giant in town, he said proudly. Like you guys, when you come to school in your school uniform, you look all smart, don't you? George left his old clothes behind the shop. He was about to go home when he heard a sound. On the pavement stood a giraffe who was sniffing sadly. What's the matter? Asked George. It's my neck, said the giraffe. It's so very long and very cold. I wish I had a long, warm scarf. Wonder how they'll solve this problem. Cheer up, said George, and he took off his stripy scarf. It didn't match my socks anyway, he said as he wound it round and round the giraffe's neck. It made a wonderful scarf. Thank you, said the giraffe. As George strode towards home, he sang to himself, my tie is a scarf for a cold giraffe, but look me up and down, I'm the smartest giant in town. Do you agree? Do you think he's the smartest? George came to a river. On a boat stood a goat who was bleating loudly. What's the matter? Asked George. It's my sail, said the goat. It blew away in the storm. I wish I had a strong new sail for my boat. Wonder how they're going to solve that problem. Let's have a look. Cheer up, said George, as he took off his new white shirt. It kept on coming untucked anyway, he said as he tied it to the mast of the goat's boat. It made a magnificent sail. Thank you, said the goat. George strode along, singing to himself. My tie is a scarf for a cold giraffe. My shirt's on a boat, there's a sail for a goat. But look me up and down, I'm the smartest giant in town. Do you agree? George came to a tiny ruined house. Beside the house stood a white mouse with lots of baby mice. They were all squeaking. Can you do your best squeaking mouse sound? Squeak, 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 squeak. What's the matter? Asked George. It's our house, squeaked the mother mouse. It burned down and now we have nowhere to live. I wish I had a nice new house. Ooh, how do you think they're going to solve this problem? Let's find out. Cheer up, said George, and he took off one of his shiny shoes. It was giving me blisters anyway, he said, as the mouse and her baby scrambled inside. The shoe made a perfect home for them. Thank you, they squeaked. George hopped along the road now, but he didn't mind. As he hopped along, he sang to himself. My tie is a scarf for a cold giraffe. My shirt's on a boat, there's a sail for a goat. My shoe is a house for a little white mouse. But look me up and down, I'm the smartest giant in town. I'm not sure that the townspeople like his singing very much. Look at that illustration. Covering their ears. George came to a campsite, and beside the tent stood a fox who was crying. What's the matter? Asked George. It's my sleeping bag, said the fox. I dropped it in a puddle. I wish I had a nice warm sleeping bag. Have you got any ideas what happens next? Let's see. Cheer up, said George, and he took off one of his socks with diamonds up the side. It was tickling my toes anyway, he said, as the fox snuggled into it. It made a very fine sleeping bag. Thank you, said the fox. George hopped on, singing to himself. My tie is a scarf for a cold giraffe. My shirt's on a boat, there's a sail for a goat. My shoe is a house for a little white mouse. One of my socks is a bed for a fox. But look me up and down, I'm the smartest giant in town. Do you still think he looks smart? I'm not too sure. George came to a big squelchy bog. Beside the bog stood a dog who was howling. Let's hear your best dog howls. Ow! What's the matter? Asked George. It's this bog, said the dog. I need to get across it, but I keep getting stuck in the mud. I wish there was a safe, dry path. Any ideas, boys and girls, what might happen next? Cheer up, said George, as he took off his smart new belt. It was squishing my tummy anyway, he said, as he laid it down over the bog. It made an excellent path. "Thank you," said the dog. The wind started to blow, but George didn't mind. He hopped on, singing to himself. Can you help me, boys and girls? "My tie is a scarf for a cold giraffe. My shirt's on a boat as a sail for her. My shoe is a house for a little white. One of my socks is a bed for her. My belt helped a dog who was crossing her." But my trousers are falling down. Oh, we can see his pants. I'm the coldest giant in town. Suddenly, George felt sad and shivery and not at all smart. He stood on one foot and thought, "I'll have to go back to the shop and buy more clothes." He turned around and hopped all the way back to the shop. But when he got there, it was closed. "Oh no," cried George. He sat down on the doorstep and a little tear ran down his nose. He felt as sad as all the animals he had met on his way home. Then, out of the corner of his eye, he saw a bag with something familiar poking out of the top. So George had a closer look. "My gown," he yelled. "My dear old gown and sandals." George put them on. They felt wonderfully comfortable. "I am the cosiest giant in town," he cried, and he danced all the way back home along the road. Outside of his front door stood all of the animals he had helped. They were carrying an enormous present. "Come on, George," they said. "Open it." George untied the ribbon. Inside was a beautiful gold paper crown and a card. "Look inside the card, George," said the animals. George put the crown on his head and opened the card. Inside it said, "Your tie is a scarf for a cold giraffe. Your shirt's on a boat as a sail for a goat. Your shoe is a house for a little white mouse. One of your socks is a bed for a fox. Your belt helped a dog who was crossing a bog. So here is your very fine crown to go with your sandals and gown." Of the kindest giant in town. Do you agree? Do you think he is the kindest? I think George was so kind to share some of his things to help other people. Can you think of a time when you've done that, or when you could do that to help some of your friends or your family? Thank you so much for letting me share this story with you. I've absolutely loved it, and I hope you've enjoyed it too. Please keep watching, because I think some of the other teachers will be popping on this week and sending you some other stories that they've shared as well. Okay, thank you so much for listening, children. And again, can't wait to see you next week. Okay, bye. Bye.